Transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold. These are the epic words we love to hear and get chills down our spine whenever we play a Soulcalibur game. And why do we love it? Because it just sounds so freaking epic. Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Jakejames Lugo, welcome to the channel, and today we're talking about Soulcalibur II, a game that a lot of people, myself included, have very fond memories of playing. And honestly, I've wanted to tackle this game for quite some time, and I love just covering and talking about this series because, like I said, they just sound so freaking epic in so many ways. Soulcalibur II is the third entry of the Souls series, released in 2002 by Namco. The game really exploded in popularity when it was ported to multiple home consoles in 2003, however. To me, this was the game that made Soulcalibur a household name, despite the series having a presence beforehand in the arcades and on consoles like the Dreamcast. The plot of the game continues from the previous Soulcalibur story, where a collection of warriors battle it out for possession of the pieces to a legendary weapon called Soul Edge. If you're not caught up to the lore of the series, Soul Edge is a powerful weapon that many seek to use for their own purposes, either to conquer the world or prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Soulcalibur II is set 4 years after its predecessor, with the terror of Soul Edge ravaging across Middle-Age Europe and the coming of the Holy Blade known as Soulcalibur. It's a very shallow plot that is nowhere near as deep as what the series would establish later, but it serves as a good thread of backstory to a fighting game. When it was released for home consoles, the game was a critical and commercial success, due to a lot of good word of mouth and the inclusion of guest characters. This was the first time in the series where guest characters were a big part of the appeal. It would later on become a staple of successive releases and convert a lot of people into fans of Soulcalibur.
You again? I've had enough of you!
Haven't you had enough?
Battle 1. Fight!
So most of this review is going to be based on the PlayStation 2 version of Soulcalibur 2, because it was the one that I owned and that I grew up playing. But I've played all the different versions, and everything that I say about this version of the game, you could apply it to both the GameCube and the Xbox version. And the one thing I want to emphasize is just how good Soulcalibur 2 still looks, even by today's standards. For a PlayStation 2 game, this game has aged really gracefully. It just looks freaking good, even for a PS2 game, but more importantly than that, it sounds just as good. I absolutely love the soundtrack of Soulcalibur 2. I think that the music in this game is absolutely fantastic. All the Soulcalibur games have epic music to them and they just sound pretty darn good, but I always go back to Soulcalibur 2 because it was the one that really just set the type of mood and the theme and just the tone for the entire series for me. It's like, I could just like think of just in my head like what Soulcalibur sounds like, and it's more than likely going to be something pulled from Soulcalibur 2. It just sounds so freaking epic.
Repent! Battle 1. Fight!
Don't move! I got you!
With that aside, let's talk about gameplay finally, and we'll get into specific stuff later on because stuff that I know you guys want me to talk about, but let's start with the core gameplay and see why exactly so many people that are fans of this series still consider Soulcalibur 2 to be one of the best entries of the entire franchise. A lot of Soulcalibur 2 is very similar to what later releases in the series would have. This game was so popular that it really shaped the foundation of the entire series. Why is that? Because it just feels good to control and move around in Soulcalibur 2. As a 3D fighter, you can move in and out of space with ease, allowing matches to cover a wide area within the beautiful stages. There's plenty of room, even though there's small areas with ring outs. Yeah, that's a big thing in Soulcalibur. You can knock your opponents off the side of a stage to win a round. It's surprisingly easy to do and can happen when you least expect it. But what about your attacks during a fight? How are those? The game uses a 4-button layout for your controls. There's horizontal and vertical weapon attacks, a physical attack or a kick button for most characters, and a standard block button. It's simple and easy to work with, and every character has a wide arsenal of attacks. No matter who you pick from the game's roster of 25 playable characters, everyone will have their own strategies and helpful tech in a matchup.
Battle! Fight! Ready?
Most of the time, you'll get into situations where you'll have to outpoke or rush down your opponent during a match, but things can get very tense when you start using the guard impact. This is basically a parry, where you can neglect an incoming attack and counter immediately afterwards. It's a vital thing to do when you're faced with someone who likes to rush you down or when you need to make a big shift in momentum. However, your opponent can do the same thing and put you both in a situation where there's a constant back and forth with guard impacts. This could get crazy and incredibly fun when playing with other people, even though it's just as nerve-wracking against the CPU. Overall, the fighting in here just feels incredibly solid and very addicting to play over and over again.
I've been waiting for this day for too long!
Everything from the speed of the game to the way that the controls feel to just the different types of combos and the ease of use for a lot of different attacks you have in this game just makes Soulcalibur II feel so good. It's just something that I've wanted to go back to playing time and time again, both with friends and even alone just against the computer on like arcade mode or something. It just feels great to play, whether you're playing on a PlayStation controller or a GameCube controller or even an Xbox controller or even an arcade stick. If you have an arcade stick and play these type of games on that, you still are going to feel just how good this game is just to play overall. Some of my favorite characters to play with include Mitsurugi, Nightmare, I love Sophidia, I love Cervantes, Ivy's another good one. Again, there's so many characters on this roster specifically that I kind of bounce from time to time, whether I'm playing alone or with friends. And I feel like there's a little bit of something for everybody. No matter what type of characters you like, what type of fighting style that you like, there's something here that you'll pretty much gravitate towards and really have a fun time using in this game. But of course, with all things, not everything is all sunshine and rainbows, and not everything is perfect about Soulcalibur II. There's one thing, or a few things I should say in particular, that weren't really something I was really too happy about. Most of Soulcalibur II is pretty great and deserves a lot of the praise that it gets. But the one place I feel this game is lacking is in the game modes. It's kinda tough to say that too, because looking back with hindsight 2020, Soulcalibur II was developed way before story modes became a huge part of fighting games. The only other fighting game I could think of that wasn't back then was Mortal Kombat Deception, which came out a year after Soulcalibur II was ported to the home consoles. Because of that, I'm being a little lenient here. But honestly, there isn't a whole lot of big game modes in Soulcalibur II outside of the core arcade and versus modes. Here's the catch, however. There is a Weapon Master mode that acts like a pseudo-story campaign with missions to complete. But the plot that you're given isn't tied to the canon of the series, and it feels like an excuse to have a story-like mode included here. Apparently, this mode is some sort of retread of a conquest mode that was included in the arcade version of Soulcalibur II, which has players taking on groups of enemies in one-round battles to gain experience and a ranking. I never played in the arcade, so I can't really speak much to it. Anyway, Weapon Master mode on the consoles has you partaking in matches with different criteria and allows you to unlock bonus weapons for the entire roster. This could get a little repetitive and very frustrating with some missions, including a few that feel very one-sided. The unlockable weapons you gain come with abilities and bonuses when you equip them before a match, which can help that out mildly. This is cool for those that like collecting stuff, but their significance is really limited to Weapon Master mode and the game's extra menu. To sum it up, the extra menus means that the abilities and the perks that you get from bonus weapons you unlock can be applied to matches in arcade and in versus, but the core fighting stays the same. I find this to be shallow and not really the game's strongest aspect, since it feels like it was thrown in at the last minute. Do you really need to complete Weapon Master at all though? Yes, if you want to unlock all the extra characters and stages. But once you do that, there's not much else to really gain from spending a lot of time in Weapon Master. And yeah, I do know that you could get the joke weapons and all the Soul Edge and Soulcalibur weapons unlocked for the entire roster if you complete everything, but I really don't feel it's necessary. Most of your time is really going to be spent playing in the arcade or in versus mode with other people anyway.
Fight!
Try dodge.
Okay, look. Maybe I should clarify and say that Weapon Master mode in of itself is not a terrible or garbage mode. There's far worse things that I've seen in other games. But it wasn't something that I really connected with or really got a whole lot out of, other than just trying to unlock all the different characters, the stages, maybe some of the weapons here and there. It wasn't really something that was like on the same level or par that I would see from like the Mortal Kombat series or any other fighting games later on that came with story modes. Okay, finally. Now let's talk about the guest characters for Soulcalibur II for all 3 versions of the game, since I know you guys have been patiently waiting to discuss this. And trust me, if you were like me back in the day, this was the reason why you got this game in the first place. Because back then, it was a real exciting time to be a fan of this series, because there was just something special and exciting for just about everybody. Now, if we're all being honest with each other, most of us picked up Soulcalibur II because of the different guest characters we saw in the promos and the gameplay trailers. I've played both the GameCube and the Xbox versions many times over the years, even though I had just owned the PlayStation 2 version. I had friends who owned the other ones and occasionally played with me. Every version of Soulcalibur II has its own guest fighter, each with a unique fighting style and very cool abilities. The PlayStation 2 got Heihachi from the Tekken series, Xbox users got to play with Todd McFarlane's Spawn, and the GameCube received Link from The Legend of Zelda. For me personally, it's pretty obvious that the most exciting one to use was Link, with Spawn being a very close second. Link gets all of his unique moves from games like Ocarina of Time, and even receives a special jingle when he wins a match. Spawn just looks like a badass and fights with a massive battle axe. His moves are powerful and look devastating, but he also lacks his iconic cape from the comics. This might have been left out because of limitations of the consoles at the time. Not a huge deal, but it's definitely noteworthy. And finally, there's Heihachi. It makes sense to include him since Tekken is a Namco game, but his fighting style is very basic in comparison to the other guest characters. If you've played any Tekken game before, then you know what to expect. Nothing more or less than that. Real talk, I would have loved to see Namco include one of their RPG characters as a guest fighter instead of Heihachi. Imagine seeing a Tales of character included in here, such as Ston from Tales of Destiny or Crest from Tales of Phantasia. Those games were out before Soulcalibur II, so they could have been considered. It just would have made a whole lot more sense to have a character who uses weapons when they fight in a game like Soulcalibur, especially when we already have Yoshimitsu on the roster, who also appears in the Tekken games. We just didn't need Heihachi to be in here, to be honest. I should say that all 3 guest fighters aren't completely terrible, and they each get their own little stories to justify why they're in the game. But if I had to choose the best one, I'd say that Link on the GameCube was given the most care and attention of the 3, and it definitely shows. If we're still being honest with each other here, there really wasn't anything big that anybody was missing if you only got one version of the game and you never got to play the other 2 versions, because essentially, the game itself, the core combat and everything else, was exactly the same. It was just the guest characters that were the major difference. So if you can't tell already, can I recommend that you guys check out Soulcalibur II? Hell yes! This game is still awesome, it is still a classic, and personally for me, I consider it to be the best entry of the entire series. Some people have considered other Soulcalibur games to be better for one reason or another, but personally for me, I feel like you could always go back to Soulcalibur II and have a great time. If you're looking for a great classic fighting game, you can't go wrong with Soulcalibur II. It looks great, it sounds great, it plays great, it is still one of the most epic fighting games of all time. And there you go, everyone. Those are my thoughts about Soulcalibur II. Again, I think this game is awesome. It's epic. It's so much fun. I have so many fond memories of this game, like many of you do as well, no matter what platform you played it on. And it's just cool just to kind of look back at this game. This game is still freaking awesome. It's still cool to play. It's just still people swear by this game. And even though, again, we got that HD re-release, it is what it is. But again, this game is just still freaking cool, man. But as always, with anything that I look at on this channel, that's just my opinion about it. Let me know what you think about this game down below in the comments section. Tell me, are you a fan of Soulcalibur II? Do you like the series? What were some of your favorite guest characters in any of the games that were released for the franchise? Doesn't necessarily have to be Soulcalibur II. Which characters do you want to see make it into the games? That's a more interesting one. Tell me about that stuff down below in the comments section. Hey there everyone, thanks for watching this video. I appreciate all of your support as always. On the side here I have some game reviews and other cool videos you might like to watch. Make sure you leave me a comment down below and subscribe to the channel too. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to be in the know when I post up new videos for you to check out. I'll talk to you all again real soon. Peace out and stay epic everybody.